Every word that leaves your mouth today is doing something you cannot see yet. It is being received, sorted, and acted on by a part of you that never sleeps, never argues, and never once asks if you really meant it. By the end of this, you will have one sentence, short enough to remember in the middle of a hard day, that can begin turning your life in a completely different direction before tonight is over. But first, I want you to think about something you already know. Even if you have never said it out loud, you know what it feels like to catch yourself saying the same tired words again. I never get a break. Nothing good happens to me. I'm so exhausted. You say it almost like a joke, almost like a sigh, and you move on with your day, not realizing that something was listening very, very closely. Something was writing it down. I want to tell you about a woman named Marion, because her story is the kind that stays with you. Marion ran a small alterations shop above a dry cleaner, 2 narrow rooms with a sewing machine in the corner and a curtain instead of a proper fitting room door. Her husband had left 2 winters before, and since then she had been doing the books herself, late at night, with a calculator that needed new batteries and a lamp that flickered if you bumped the table. She would sit there at 11 o'clock, shoulders aching, pins still stuck in the cushion on her wrist, and she would say, almost without noticing she was saying it, "I am so tired of just barely making it." She said it the way you might say good morning, automatic, unquestioned. A little sentence she had repeated so many times it had worn a groove into her, the way water wears a groove into stone. And here is the part that matters. The part of her that was listening did not hear a complaint. It heard an order. It does not know the difference between venting and asking. It simply takes whatever you hand it and gets to work making it true. So while Marion sat there exhausted, certain she was only describing her circumstances, she was actually placing an order for more of them. More tightness, more scarcity, more nights exactly like that one. Every word you speak is a seed. You drop it without thinking, the way you might drop a sunflower seed on the way to the compost bin, never imagining anything will grow from something so small and so careless. But something always grows. The soil does not check whether you meant it. The soil simply receives what is placed into it and begins, patiently, faithfully, to grow exactly that. This is the part most people never get told plainly enough. Your subconscious mind is not your judge. It is not weighing your character or deciding if you deserve good things. It is more like a deeply devoted gardener who has taken a vow never to argue with you, never to correct you, never to ask if you are sure. You say, "Nothing ever works out for me," and the gardener nods and plants exactly that. You say, "I am safe and things are working out," and the same obedient gardener plants that instead, with the very same devotion, the very same care. It is not choosing sides. It is simply doing what you tell it to do, over and over, in the exact words you give it. Marion did not know any of this yet. She just knew she was tired, and she said so, the way you might say so right now if someone asked you how your week had been. And the garden of her life kept producing more of the same slow trickle of customers, the same anxious wait for the rent, the same nights at the flickering lamp. If you have ever caught yourself in a moment like that, saying the tired thing without meaning to, then wondering why your week felt heavier than it needed to be, type the word tired in the comments right now. Just that one word. I want to see how many of us recognize this in ourselves, because I think it is far more of us than we realize. Now, I know what some of you are already thinking, because I have heard it many times before. You are thinking, "I have tried saying nice things to myself. I have tried affirmations. They didn't work." And I want to be honest with you about why. It was never that the words were too small or too simple. Most people give up on a seed planted on Tuesday morning because nothing visible has happened by Tuesday afternoon. They dig it up to check. They say one kind sentence about their life and then spend the rest of the day quietly burying it under 20 old complaints. A seed cannot grow if you keep pulling it out of the ground to see if it has worked yet. And it certainly cannot compete against 20 contradicting orders given the very same day. This is why a single morning affirmation so often falls flat. It is not that the universe was unimpressed. It is that one warm sentence at 7 in the morning has almost no chance against the quiet, habitual grumbling that runs underneath the rest of your day. In traffic, on hold with the bank, scrolling through bills at midnight. The gardener is still listening during all of that. He does not clock out after breakfast. What changed everything for Marion was something almost embarrassingly small. A customer left an old paperback on the counter by accident, something about the power of spoken words, and Marion read 3 pages of it while waiting for a hem to finish under the machine. She didn't believe it, not really. But that night, instead of saying her usual sentence about barely making it, she tried something different, almost as an experiment. She put her hand flat on the counter and said quietly, "Good is already moving toward me, even now." Nothing dramatic, no fireworks. She felt a little foolish saying it out loud to an empty shop, but she said it again the next morning while she unlocked the door, and again at lunch, and again with a small private laugh at herself while she was waiting for the kettle to boil. Every word you speak is a seed, and Marion had just planted a different kind for the very first time in a long while. Within 2 weeks, a woman came in wanting 6 bridesmaid dresses altered before a wedding, far more work than Marion usually saw in a month. The woman had found her shop through someone Marion had helped years earlier, someone she had completely forgotten about. Within a month, her landlord, of all people, mentioned he was thinking of lowering the rent on the units upstairs because he wanted reliable, long-term tenants, and Marion's name came up first. None of it looked like a miracle from the outside. It looked like ordinary luck, ordinary timing. But Marion noticed something the old her would have missed completely. She noticed that the version of herself who kept saying tired, hopeless little sentences had been quietly, patiently building exactly that kind of life. And the version of herself who began saying something different, even nervously, even without full belief, had begun building something else. I want to pause here and just say something to whoever is watching this and feeling that small, quiet ache of being the one who does everything and still falls behind. You are not failing at this. You simply may have never been shown how closely your own words have been listened to. That is not a small thing to learn. It can change the entire direction of a life. And if anything in Marion's story feels close to your own right now, just write the word seed in the comments. I would love to know how many of you are sitting there nodding. If you've made it this far with me, I want to ask something small of you before we go further, because I think it matters more than people realize. If this is starting to feel true for you, even a little, take a moment to like this video and, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Not because I need you to, because the more we gather here together, the more this becomes a place where people remember who they really are, instead of forgetting it all over again by Wednesday. I would be glad to have you stay. Now let me tell you about someone else, because I think his story will reach a part of you that Marion's story didn't quite touch. There was a young man named Daniel who worked at a logistics company, the kind of job where you sit in a beige cubicle answering phone calls about delayed shipments all day. Daniel's daily soundtrack, if you had followed him around with a notebook, would have sounded almost comic in how repetitive it was. This commute is going to kill me. Of course it's raining. It always rains on the one day I need to leave early. Nobody at this company ever notices what I actually do. He didn't say these things because he was a negative person. He said them because they felt true, and because saying them gave him a small, fleeting sense of relief. The way pressing on a bruise sometimes feels like it helps, even though it never actually does. What Daniel didn't see was how literally his own mind was taking him. Every word you speak is a seed, and Daniel had been planting an entire field of frustration, watering it faithfully every single morning before he had even finished his coffee. He was promoted over twice for younger employees, and each time he told himself it confirmed what he already suspected, that he was invisible there, that hard work never gets noticed, that this was simply his lot. And the strange, quiet truth is that his own repeated words were helping to keep him exactly that invisible, because he was, without realizing it, requesting to stay unnoticed every single day. Here is where his story takes a turn worth your attention. A co-worker, someone Daniel barely spoke to, mentioned almost in passing that she started every hour with one sentence on a sticky note stuck to her monitor. Daniel laughed it off at first, the way most of us do when something simple is offered to us, as if it could possibly be enough. But that evening, sitting in the same traffic he complained about daily, he decided, mostly out of boredom, to try saying something different. Instead of his usual line about the commute, he said quietly to himself, "I am moving toward exactly where I am meant to be." He felt silly. He said it anyway, and then he kept saying it, almost daily, for no better reason than that it felt slightly better than the alternative. If you have ever caught yourself, like Daniel, repeating the same frustrated little script about your day until it became part of your identity, share in the comments one small phrase you've caught yourself saying too often. You might be surprised how many people recognize their own words in yours. What happened next for Daniel wasn't instant, and I want to be honest with you about that, because I would rather you trust this practice for the right reasons than expect it to behave like magic. 3 weeks passed before anything visibly shifted. Then a manager from another department, someone Daniel had spoken to maybe twice, reached out about an opening on a smaller, calmer team with better hours and significantly better pay. It came through someone Daniel had almost forgotten existed. He didn't apply for it. It was offered to him. And he later admitted that the version of him who had spent years complaining about being overlooked would never have been the kind of person such an offer naturally finds. There is a sentence I want to give you now, the same kind of sentence Marion found in that paperback, and Daniel borrowed from a co-worker's sticky note. I want you to think of it as a seed you can plant on the hour. Every hour, for as long as you need it. Set a quiet reminder if it helps. When it sounds, pause wherever you are, take one slow breath, and say this gently, like you actually mean it. I am rooted in abundance. Every part of my life blooms in perfect order now, and grace tends to the rest in wonderful and unexpected ways. Say it slowly. Let the words land somewhere real, not just on your tongue. I am rooted in abundance. This is your identity, not a wish, not a hope, but a quiet claim about who you already are underneath all the worry. Every part of my life blooms in perfect order now. This is comprehensive, leaving nothing out, your health, your money, your relationships, your peace, all of it included, all of it growing at once. And grace tends to the rest in wonderful and unexpected ways. This is the part that lets you stop gripping so tightly, the part that admits you don't have to figure out the how, because something wiser than your worry is already arranging it. Every word you speak is a seed, and this particular seed, planted hour after hour, has a way of quietly rearranging a life from the inside out, long before anything visible changes on the outside. That gap between speaking the word and seeing the harvest can feel uncomfortable. You may say this sentence on a Tuesday and feel nothing different by Thursday. That is not failure. That is simply how growing things behave. Nothing you have ever planted in soil broke the surface the same afternoon you planted it. If today has been a heavy one for you, if you're watching this with tired eyes after a long shift or a hard conversation, type the word ready in the comments if you're willing to start planting something different starting tonight. I want this comment section to become a small, quiet garden of its own, full of people choosing the same thing at the same moment. There is a second sentence I want to leave with you as well, a smaller one, for the moments when the first feels like too much to hold. Some hours you will not have the energy for a long, beautiful declaration. Some hours you will simply need something short enough to whisper between one task and the next. For those hours, I want you to have this instead. I am safe. I am provided for. My good is already on its way to me. Say this one when you're rushed, when you're scared, when the bill arrives or the phone rings with bad news. It does not need to be elaborate to be powerful. It only needs to be repeated with feeling instead of the old sentence that used to live in that exact same moment. I want you to notice something about both Marion and Daniel before we go further, because I think it's the part most people skip past too quickly. Neither of them felt completely confident the first time they said something different. Neither of them had proof yet that it would work. They simply chose, in a single ordinary moment, to hand their faithful gardener a different seed than the one they'd been handing over for years. That is the only requirement here. Not certainty, not perfect faith, just a willingness to try planting something new, even while your hands are still a little unsure. If there is one fear you are quietly carrying into this very moment, something you haven't said out loud to anyone today, type the word here in the comments. Just that single word, no explanation needed. Sometimes simply marking that a fear exists in a place where other people are doing the same thing beside you takes some of its weight away. Every word you speak is a seed, and I want you to carry that with you long after this video ends, into the grocery store, into the difficult phone call, into the quiet of your own kitchen tonight. Not as a rule to follow perfectly, but as a gentle truth to remember softly, the way you remember to breathe. So here is what I want you to do, starting the very next time the clock strikes a new hour. Pause, just for a breath. And instead of letting your mind wander back to whatever has been worrying you, speak one of these 2 sentences out loud, even quietly, even just under your breath if you're somewhere that asks for quiet. Do it again the hour after that, and the hour after that. Not because 1 hour will change everything by itself, but because a seed planted once is easily forgotten by morning, while a seed planted again and again, faithfully, hour by hour, day by day, eventually becomes impossible for your life to ignore. I want to ask you something before you go, and I'd really love an honest answer in the comments. What is the one worry that has been sitting quietly underneath your day to day? The one you haven't said out loud yet? You don't have to explain it fully. You don't have to justify it. Just naming it here, in this small gathering of people who are all trying to plant something better, might be the first gentle seed of relief you've allowed yourself in a while. I read every single one, and I think you'll find that whatever you're carrying, someone else reading the comments will recognize it too, and will quietly be glad they weren't the only one. Whatever has felt heavy for you lately, you do not have to carry it the same way tomorrow. You only have to begin handing your faithful gardener something different than what you've been handing over without thinking. Every word you speak is a seed, and from this very hour forward, you get to choose, gently, patiently, and with whatever faith you can find today, exactly what you want to grow.